guess I'm going to start. Whoops. Hello. Darn, a ruined surprise. Good morning. Hello. Hi. Once again, as Tom said, I've been given the honor of being the first talk at AdventureX for the second year in a row, which means I'm going to be setting the tone for the whole event. So, you know, no pressure. Why don't you go on? Sorry. There we go. So I'm really glad I got that right. My name is Gilbert, and I'm based in New York. I founded Wadjet Eye Games in 2006, almost 10 years ago to the day, and there's actually a cake outside that someone made. So thank you for that. I was later joined by my wife, Janet, and my daughter, Eve, who's 3, hasn't quite learned to code yet, but we're working. Over the last decade, we've released 15 games under our name. Some we've written ourselves, some we've published, but we've been heavily involved with all of them. We're not a hands-off publisher by any means, so we have a lot of experience making these games. And so for the last year, I have been working full-time on a game called Unavowed. And it had been in my head for a number of years. It was first inspired by the words of a former BioWare writer named Jennifer Hepler. Here's the quote there, paraphrased because it's a lot longer than that. But she made the point that in a lot of games that are combat-based, you're allowed to skip the cutscenes and the narrative sections to get to the combat. And what she wanted was the opposite. She wanted to skip the combat and get to the juicy narrative stuff. Things like the fighting, the tactics, the min-maxing of gear, that just got in the way. It was kind of a slog, it took up a lot of time and just wasn't enjoyable. And sadly, if you follow this, she got a lot of undeserved flack for expressing this view. I won't get into any of that here. But her words always stuck with me because I really agree with them. I'm a big fan of these mid-era BioWare games like Dragon Age or Knights of the Old Republic. And Jennifer actually worked on Dragon Age Origins. And like Jen herself, this was a big inspiration for me. The fun of the game for me was the narrative, the branching dialogue, the choice and consequences, choosing which companion characters to bone. I mean, that's this was the heart and soul of these experiences for me. And like Jen, this is a game I really wanted to play. So my thoughts have always been, why not make a game where that is the primary focus? This sounds like the game of my dreams to me. It's a game I really wanted to play but didn't exist, so eventually I decided I should make that game. But I kept putting it off because it sounded really ambitious, and so I kept putting it off. And then a few years later, I actually met Jen Hepler at the game developer conference in San Francisco. And we started talking, and it turned out we were old friends. We went to summer camp together when we were 13. We hung out at each other's houses, and I had been following her career for years, and I had no idea. It's been it'd been 25 years, and she changed her name when she got married, but it was this bizarre, serendipitous thing. And if I was looking for some sign from the heavens that I should make this game, then I couldn't find anything more clear. So it was time, and I was going to make this game, Unavowed. And I was in a very good position at this point to do so. I had, like I said, 10 years making games, 15 games altogether. I built a really great foundation of knowledge and experience. So there was never going to be a better time to make this game. And I already had my title, and I already had my setting. I was going to make a dark urban fantasy set in New York, inspired by things like the Dresden Files, World of Darkness, and Hellblazer. I love all of these things. And I was really super psyched to make this game. So I sat down and I started working on designs, and I was really excited. I'm like, yes, I'm going to do this. And thus began the worst battle with writer's block I have ever fought in my life. And I'm sure many creative people have dealt with this. Honestly, I had never been so blocked. There was progress, there was forward momentum, but it was agonizingly slow. And it really did a number on my self-esteem for a while. My first thought that it was only due to the large scope of this project. Like the Bioware games I was inspired by. You know, I said the same thing when I practiced this talk earlier, and it's why I was all right, let me start that over so I sound smart. Like the Bioware games I was inspired by, you have access to 5 companion characters, of which you can choose 2 of them to go out with you. But rather than give you different tactics in combat situations, they give you different solutions to solving problems in the game world. For example, this character is sitting down, his name is Logan, he can talk to ghosts, and by doing so they'll give you extra background detail, which could, for example, be used to gain favor with an NPC or help solve a problem in some other way. Or this guy, Eli, who can set shit on fire. Sorry, I know there was a kid here. Should I have said that? I'll be good. So designing for these different scenarios takes a lot of time. And also the game can't be short as a result. Otherwise, the player cannot take advantage of this mechanic of choosing different combinations of characters. So it needed to be a large game. So this alone made this a much more challenging project to work on than I had intended. But my issue with the block went a little bit deeper than this. It was like 2 different parts of me were fighting each other. And I pretentiously call this a battle between my instincts and my experience. Finally get to the point. Of course, instincts are the gut feelings. Something feels right or wrong. You can't really describe how or why. You just feel it. It's just instinct. Experience, of course, is the knowledge you gain by doing something a lot. You do something, it works or it doesn't, you get feedback, you do better. The skills, the theories, the learned behavior, the leveling up, as it were, for a project, for any kind of skill. And in ideal situations, instinct and experience work like this, hand in hand. They work together. Instinct will tell you that something isn't working, and then your experience will enable you to figure out how and why, how to fix it. Instinct could tell you that something is really, really great, and your experience will tell you how to make it even better, or to make the best use of it. But more often for me, this often feels like this. There's a bare-knuckle drag-out fight going on inside my creative process. And with every bit of design I put on paper, I felt like I came out the other side feeling like I ran a marathon. This is all very esoteric, and the 2 things sometimes merge and switch sides, but this is how I visualized it in my head. And from the very beginning production on this game, I knew I wanted to focus more on things like immersion and exploration and discovery. It's something I didn't really do very well in my previous games. I wanted the act of discovery to be rewarding. In most of my previous work, like Blackwell and Emerald City Confidential, you discovered new things by someone just telling you about the new thing. And I wanted to take some steps towards changing that. So I did some placeholder art for one of the games. This is from the very first mission of the game, after you've been recruited into this secret organization called the Unavowed. You and your 2 companion characters are looking into some strange cult happenings in the East Village. This room is the basement of an abandoned building. And I knew when I was kind of fleshing out this area, there'd be a sacrificial altar, and a ghost, and a dead body on the floor. I know it's obvious when you look at that picture. But as I was working on this image, my instinct kind of took over. I thought that even though there's a ghost there, that the room itself was a bit boring. And I wondered how to kind of make it more visually interesting. And just out of nowhere came this thought, what if the basement was half forest? As the result of some magic that's being performed there. It was pure instinct, and I liked it, so I just went with it. So I took all my art and my art talent, and I added that. Damn. If only I could get away with using art like this. It would be so much easier. Anyway, here's the final one. I think this is pretty cool. My instincts were pretty spot on in this instance. And when all the elements were in the game, my experience kind of butted in and told me that this was wrong. There's just too much going on here. I'm asking the player to process 3 big things at the same time, within seconds. You know, you get the, oh my god, there's a forest here, and there's a dead body on the floor, and holy crap, there's a freaking ghost! And since this is a 2D game, I can't really direct the player's point of view. In a 3D game, that's a lot more possible. You can, kind of direct the player's movements in a more natural way, so you could discover all these things in a more well-paced fashion. But with a 2D image just thrown up there, you're not really discovering it. You're just walking into the room. I knew this would be very overwhelming to players just coming into the room for the first time. And this is what my experience has taught me. This is what probably would happen, and I knew I had to fix it. So my instincts wanted this awesome room, but my experience was the strict teacher telling me no. So it's like my gut versus my brain. And this was agonizing. I knew I had to get these 2 sides of me to work together, or else I couldn't continue working on this game. I was really stuck. So I had to take a few steps back and try to remember what my goals were. I wanted the players to feel rewarded for discovering something themselves. And that wasn't happening. Whoops, Bella, go back. And so I needed to slow things down and enable the player to discover and process this stuff in their own time. So the first thing was the dead body. That was easy. I threw a blanket on it. It stands out, but it's not immediately obvious. So it requires the player to kind of explore and look around the room with their eyes until they see it. Then they remove the blanket and, oh god, dead body. So that was the easy one. That took no time at all. The ghost was a slightly trickier problem. After several days of trying different things and thinking about it, I realized that the issue wasn't that there was a ghost in the room. The issue was that this is the first time you encounter a ghost. So amidst all of this basements, forest, and crazy stuff going on, you learn about ghosts and how they work right after discovering something else. So this is a lot of new information piled up on top of new information, which is just overwhelming. This is something my experience has taught me would happen, because I've made this exact mistake before. So I fixed it by introducing the ghost in another room of the building. You are free of most major distractions here, so you can absorb this new development pretty easily. And when you go into the basement and find the ghost, it's something you've already digested, and means you're not choking on it. I also wanted the player to work a little bit to discover the forest in the first place. So I turned the lights off. And you need to use Eli's fire magic to add a bit of light, which reveals a fuse box that you can fix to turn the lights on. So basically, I added the extra bit of lore about how, since this is a magical forest, it protects itself from fire, which is why the fire can extend beyond that point. And yeah, I totally created lore to justify a design decision, which happens more often than you think. So yeah, after several weeks of tearing my hair out, I finally got both sides of working together, hand in hand, into the sunset. And the results were very good. I was very happy with how this turned out. But it doesn't always end up so happily. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to focus on immersion and discovery in this game. And I wanted to do that by allowing you to explore a place instead of just a battle. In most of my previous games, you navigated the world by clicking items on a map screen. So I decided early on, no map screens. Aside from one, Unavowed takes place within all 5 boroughs of New York. So to get to these boroughs, you kind of need a map, and the subway seemed like the most obvious place to put it, so it was unavoidable. But once you're in a borough, once you're in a hub area, you're there. You explore it by going from point A to point B with no interruptions or any fancy transitions. And I didn't know it at the time, but this decision made things very difficult for me. One thing my experience has taught me over the years is to keep things efficient and tight. I don't like padding. Padding bothers me. And I don't like it when I play games that are padded, and I try to avoid it in my own work. And here I was deliberately making the players do more. Rather than just selecting items on the map screen to get to a place, I'm making you walk, I'm making you hoof it. So to negate this, I really had to spend a lot of time designing each area to be as walk-friendly as possible. So here's a quick sketch of the Staten Island map, one of the hub areas in the game. Each square represents one background, one room to walk through, and I kept it pretty tight. There's 9 backgrounds here. And you can even see here, 3 locations could be accessed from one room. And I was very proud of this. It's a very efficient, tight map. And I made sure that there was something relevant and important on every screen, no padding at all. And everything was going great until I started putting together the gameplay and the characters and dialogue for this room, the police station exterior. Here you need to speak to this police captain, whose name is Joy Harrison. And I like to keep things efficient, so I put her outside the police station. But for some reason, when I sat down to write her dialogue, I just couldn't get into her head for some reason. I knew who she was, I knew what her backstory was, but I just couldn't get there. Something was wrong. This was instinct kind of rearing its ugly head again. And I couldn't continue until I figured out why, because everything I was writing was coming across sounding very hollow and shallow and superficial. I just wasn't gelling. And it took days of trying to, banging my head again, before I realized the problem. I couldn't get into her head because I didn't know why she was outside. What is she doing there? My experience, of course, taught me that it's better to have her outside, keep things efficient, don't waste the player's time, don't have padding, ticked all the right boxes on my list of the right things to do. But now my instincts were telling me this was bad. The obvious thing, of course, would be to add another room. Enable the player to go inside the police station and you can talk to her there. But I resisted this with every fiber of my being, because if I did that, I'd be left with this completely pointless background, which I couldn't remove. It was just hanging there on the map, like flabby and useless, just a buffer between one room and the next. And this went against everything I had learned about good design. Back in the map screen days, this wouldn't have been a problem. You just click on the map, go into the police station, and you'd be there. But now I had to work around this new design paradigm. So I agonized over this, kind of maybe more than I should have. I kept trying to think of reasons why she was outside. Maybe she's on a smoke break, maybe she's drinking coffee, maybe she's on her phone. I rejected all of them. None of them felt right, none of them helped me get into her head. And I eventually decided, oh, she's waiting for the bus. That bus stop wasn't there originally, we added that, put her at the bus stop, and then I'm just like, this is dumb, what am I doing? I realized finally what the problem was, that having her on the street removed all of her authority. She's in a position of power, and the plot and story kind of rely on her being in that position of power. So if there was no way around it, I bit the goddamn bullet and I added another location and I put her inside. I stopped short. Usually a police captain would be in an office. I stopped short of doing that. I put her at the front desk and I justified it by saying they were short-staffed and she was at the desk. But it worked. Envisioning her at this desk surrounded by mountains of paperwork enabled me to get into her head very quickly, because I knew what she was doing and I knew what she was thinking. And her dialogue was all written in a day. It got done very quickly. So experience, instinct rather, won over experience in this case. But I still had this empty friggin' background and it bothered me like crazy. I just couldn't let this go. So I created another character who was waiting for the bus and on his phone. I had to do all those things. And put him here just to make it a little bit more interesting and less, and not totally pointless. And the ironic thing is, this character, whose name is Donnie, ended up being one of my favorite characters in the game so far. So I guess it all ended up okay. So wrapping up, because I know you all are going to do Q&A. These two scenes that I talked about, the basement and the police station, were just two examples out of many. I could talk about more, but I don't have a lot of time. And while telling you about them, it took a few minutes each. Experiencing them and dealing with them took several weeks of my time. It can be a slow, painful, grueling process. And sometimes you gotta ask yourself, gosh, is this worth it? And in the old days, 5 or 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done any of this stuff. I would have just felt that niggle that something was wrong, but I would have just plowed ahead and let it be. And the advantage to that would have been that I would be a lot further along in the design process than I currently am. Instead, I'm wasting several weeks at a time trying to make this work, trying to make my instincts and my experience, my gut and my brain happy. And when this game eventually comes out, no one will know the hell I went through. And many people will say it sucks regardless. But if my experience has taught me anything, that it's when I'm happy with my own work, then the players are happy too. So I still think it's worth it. Thank you very much. Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Have you ever made a decision favoring either instinct or experience that you later regretted?
It's not so much that I regret it. Like, I still regret having that extra background in there, but I've just learned to accept it and live with it. I sometimes go back and change things. I know that there's this one scene of the game where I added this big climactic scene because I felt that it needed a big climax. And then I decided that it just wasn't working. It didn't feel right. It felt very forced. When there was a nice emotional kind of payoff a few scenes earlier that was a lot more subdued. It didn't have that big moment that I wanted, but that felt like a more natural ending to end the section. So I cut that big climax, which had a lot of fancy art and stuff, and I hate that I had to do it. But I'm glad that I did because the game is much better for it. So it's not so much that I regret wasting the time because the game is taking so much longer to make than I personally would like. So it's not that I regret making a decision, it's that I regret wasting the time getting to that decision, especially the one I just told you about where I spent weeks to come to the decision that I should have made right away. I should have just made that decision right away and moved on. And instead I agonized over it for like several weeks. So I regret wasting time, but sometimes you just can't help it. Anyone else? Stephen?
In the Blackwell games, you know, a lot of ghosts. The ghosts you just presented us here, very different look, very different feel. Do you consider it a separate universe to the Blackwell games, a separate universe?
It's the same universe as Blackwell.
Right, okay.
There's going to be some connections, like there are ghosts in this game, and they behave the same way, but you're not Rosa Blackwell, so you can't see and talk to them. So you're kind of seeing that all from the outside. So it's connected, but it's bigger. There's a lot more stuff going on. It's not just limited to ghosts. It's expanding it to several other things.
So when you feel you're stuck, do you also try to bounce ideas, Janet or Ben, for example, and does this help you? Do you try to focus to solve these issues alone for yourself?
There's no rhyme or reason. I talk to people. I try to. You're asking how do I get through the blocks? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No rhyme or reason. I wish there was like a way, like there was a specific thing to do in order to get through it. It's more I tend to try to fall back on my experience and try to figure out why something doesn't work. Because whenever I work with a developer, whenever I'm working as a producer or publisher, I have that distance and I can be like, this doesn't work because X, because we've done this before and no one liked it, so we should do something else instead. I don't have that kind of distance from my own work. And so it's difficult. I gotta do what I've been doing. Just bang my head against the wall until something breaks, and hopefully not my head, and more stuff that might happen. So yeah, there's no right answer to how you get there. I just have to have faith that I will get there, even though it's taking a long time. Anyone else? You had your hand up as well.
When you're at the writing stage, do you tend to set yourself daily targets, or do you kind of like just wait until you feel that's a good chunk and move on to the next one?
Honestly, I don't know how I've gotten 15 games out the door. And there's no rhyme or reason to how I ever work. I mean, I have in my bag, but I have a notebook just jotted down ideas. Just no organization. A lot of people have like schedules and flowcharts, and they have like special software to write dialogue trees. I don't do any of that stuff. I just do it, and I kind of roughly know how long it'll take because I've done it so many times. So there's no rhyme or reason. I wouldn't recommend this. It's just how I personally do it. And it seems to work so far, so I keep doing it. Yes, in the back.
Well, you said no walking around padding and such. What are your feelings about double clicking on an exit to instantly teleport there, or like in the case of the Sins of the Fathers remake, you can right click to just teleport around the screen?
I think, I mean, like, there's no right or wrong answer to that either. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, I mean, if you include it and it's fun, then it works. If it's not fun and it's annoying and it looks weird, then it doesn't. I know that having a character randomly teleport around the room looks weird to me. And sometimes, like, a lot of games have double click to run, which I never understood the point of, because that's just putting a band-aid on the problem. Just have the character move faster to start with. So yeah, double clicking to exit a room, fine. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just, if it works, it works. Yes.
So you're saying that this game is, more complicated than the ones you've done before, had all the different characters. Do you therefore think that once you complete this game, the game you do after this, are you going to continue on that trajectory and make it more complicated? Or is your response back going to be, you know what, I now want to do a simple game, I want that breath of fresh air, not setting another challenge?
I don't know. I mean, it's like once I get through it, this is always the case. When I'm like, a project is new and it's shiny and it's exciting, it's going to be the best thing ever. And then you start making it, and then the game that you're making is not the game in your head, and you get tired of it. Like it just seems like a slog, and you despise it. And then you get to the end, and then you finish it, and then you just can't wait to get to the next project and start it all over again. So right now, I can't envision going through this long, lengthy, grueling process again. But when I'm done, I'll have a shiny idea, and who knows? So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do after this, because this is going to take me a while to do. So how I feel after that, I don't know.
You mentioned that in this game, you have to choose 2 extra characters to do the whole, go through the game. So I'm guessing that depending on the characters you choose, it's going to be a different gameplay or a different playthrough. So I wanted to ask 2 questions. One, how different would one playthrough from other be? And 2, how different has it been to create such a game as opposed to a linear adventure game?
It's reasonably different. I mean, some missions or some areas are more different than others. As I've kind of gained more comfortable with the format, I feel like I've gotten better at it. Like that Staten Island section, things are so different depending on which characters you choose, and I'm very proud of how that turns out. Like the ghost that you saw in that scene is the wife of another character, so if you have the Ghost Whisperer, he can help you gain favor with that other character, and if you don't have that Ghost Whisperer with you, you don't get that. So you go through the scene in a different way. So I'm trying to make it different, trying to have that sense of when you complete a mission, you wonder what it's like if you could go back and play it with someone else. To try to kind of bring a little bit of replay value and encourage discussion among players, that kind of thing. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
How different has it been to create such a game as opposed to a linear adventure game?
It's been very different because there's just a lot more of it. And the writing and that stuff, I love that. I love doing that. Like now that I really know these characters, I can just write these characters, and I love that. It's so much fun. So it's different because there's just a lot more of it. And I have to keep track of decisions you've made, and you also can choose your origin story. There's like a small playable origin for each for the main character. So I've really taken on a lot here. And so I have to keep track of choices you've made, which characters you brought with you, because their conversations will change. So it's a lot of data collection and organization of all of these different states that I've never had to do before. So that's been a new experience. So like right now I've got all this spaghetti code that kind of organizes everything. And as I progress forward, I figure out a better way to handle it and try to incorporate that into the code, and it's a mess. But so it has been different. 1 minute, okay, so one question really fast, yes?
How do you keep a project within scope and finish it?
That's been my problem. I kind of knew from the beginning this would be a big project. But fortunately, I'm in a position, even financially, where I can do it because I've got 15 games kind of earning money for me that can kind of pick up the slack while I take my sweet time making this one. So keeping it within scope, it's already big. So I'm trying not to add more. But there's, really, I don't know. It's
So like, there's 15 games in 10 years is quite a lot of games. So I'm just wondering how you did it before as well, like with specific projects.
like I said, I have no idea. I just don't. I had no rhyme or reason, no scheduling. They just happen. Some of them are very short, and some of them I published, which takes less time for me. The games I write tend to take longer because of it just takes longer. Do we have time for one more, or is that it?
You've got about 30 seconds.
Okay, quick. Yes.
How are you going about testing this nightmare?
Really, I'm going to more like events and putting it in front of people, so more people will test it. I'm trying to. I have testers who test it when I feel it's ready. It's not quite ready yet. That's going to be interesting because there's a lot of varying paths, and they all need to be tested. So that'll be a challenge. We'll see. I guess that's it, and that's it. Thank you.